being transmitted and recorded, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We also extend our acknowledgement to the traditional custodians of all the peoples on whose lands you're joining us from. In these tumultuous and unprecedented new set of circumstances we find ourselves in, it's especially important now as ever to consider and honour the knowledges, learnings and storytelling traditions of First Nations people. This was and always will be Aboriginal land. We're especially excited to hear on whose lands you're zooming from and invite you to let us know via the chat box on the bottom of your screen. I'll also release a poll shortly with a few more questions so we can learn a bit about you. When you open the chat box, you'll also notice that we've included a handy list of tips and instructions for using Zoom. If you'd like to ask a question or make a comment, we invite you to do so via the chat as well. We'll be taking all your questions and presenting them to Julia to ask Kirsten during the Q&A at the end of the event. Please feel welcome to chat to your fellow attendees and incite conversation throughout the discussion. We'll be muted for the whole event to ensure the best possible sound quality. Let us know also via the chat if you're having any trouble hearing our speakers or having any technical issues, and we'll do our best to help you out. When in doubt, the best possible solution is to exit the Zoom meeting by clicking Leave Meeting at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen and clicking on the link to this meeting again. To see our speakers, toggle your screen to Speaker View in the top right-hand corner of the Zoom window. To see all other attendees, toggle your view to Gallery View. We recommend you stay on Speaker View for the entirety of the event. I now welcome Writing New South Wales Program Manager, Julia Salas.
Thank you, Lou. I'd also like to acknowledge that I'm on Gadigal land and to pay my respects to the traditional custodians. Welcome, Kirsten. Thank you for joining us. You're in Castlemaine, Victoria, and I do want to acknowledge the fact that you're, along with the rest of Victoria, are in shutdown, and that's a difficult time for everybody. And we really, we appreciate what you're doing and what all Victorians are doing to help keep the rest of Australia safe. And appreciate that we may well also be in similar circumstances. So thank you. Kirsten and I are going to chat about her career as a journalist, an editor and an author, and talk in particular detail about the publication of her second novel, Almost a Mirror. As Lou mentioned, we'll have time for questions near the end. So you're welcome to add questions throughout the discussion, but we'll address them later. So we'll have questions, and then at the very end, we're going to play for you a fantastic, it's hard to describe what it is, musical reading performance event. So that'll be at the very end, and then we'll come back in to say goodbye. So you can very much look forward to that. So Kirsten, let's start at the beginning of your professional career. What was your first job?
Well, hi everyone. Thanks for having me. Hello, I can see your faces there. Well, the first job that I had, I guess, in the area that I wanted to be in was I worked for a publication called Real Time, and I was assistant editor there, and I was working as an arts journalist, I guess. So I was coming pretty much straight out of university. I did film at RMIT in Melbourne, and then I moved to Sydney. And yeah, so I basically got the job to be commissioned to write 1,500 words each issue on the arts. So it was just a brilliant training ground. Had to write every issue, had to edit these incredible articles. So yeah, absolutely loved it.
And how have you found that the skills that you developed then as a journalist, and obviously continued to develop throughout your career, how has that been useful as in writing a novel?
Yeah, that's a great question. Often, people don't really see that there could be an overlap. But my favourite thing is interviewing other artists. Like, I absolutely love it. And I think when you're interviewing, you have to use certain skills to get people to reveal things and to, work out people's motivations, why they do things and I think when you're writing a novel, you're using, you know, the same kinds of skills. I mean, I'm fascinated why people behave the way they do, and that's pretty much what drives me as a novelist.
It's interesting. I thought that your answer would be something along the lines of, well, you know, being a journalist taught me to be concise and to meet deadlines and things like that. But it's interesting that it's not so much the practicalities, but how you bring those that experience of working with people and interviewing them to your novel writing, and that's evident in your books. I have to say that's still
I think I'm always more interested. I mean, even as an arts journalist, I like to do things a bit differently, and you know, I want to ask questions that will get, you know, different answers from the usual. Mm-hmm. So I think I probably in another life could have been a psychologist. I think that fascinates me, you know. And I mean, I guess with an arts, you know, being an arts journalist in particular, you have a bit of a different framework. So you don't have to report the facts. You can report on expression, how people express themselves, and that really interests me.
Mm. Yeah. So while you're at Real Time, you then became an editor there and went on to do a book editing and publishing course at Macleay College. What skills did you learn there, and how have those skills helped or hindered your writing?
Yeah, I loved that course. That was 6 months, and I was doing it while I was at Real Time. I mean, editing comes into it all the time. I mean, I learnt we weren't doing it on computers so much then, so we were doing, you know, we had paper and we were learning, you know, we had red pens and we were learning how to mark a manuscript up. And all of that's really, really useful later on, because it means you can do sort of the practical element of it really quickly. Mm. And I also work with writers now working on their manuscripts as well. So, you know, that's come in handy, but especially as a fiction writer, it's really handy to be able to sort of put on my editor hat at some point. And I am able to step back from the writer, you know, from the, you know, creative, you know, process, and look at it, you know, with quite a, I think Emily Maguire said to me, you write hot and edit cold. And that's always stayed with me. I think that's brilliant. So that's how you come to the work. Yeah.
And so do you make sure that there's times when you're writing and that's very distinct from times where you have your editing hat on?
Absolutely different. Yeah. So I tend to write, I don't edit my work until I've done a whole draft. So I'll write like 100,000 words with no edit, with no judgment. So, you know, I just keep going until I've got those words. I don't really look back much. And then, you know, then I see what kind of shape it's in, and I, you know, I transfer, you know, that method of thinking. I think otherwise you'll just never get a first draft done if the next day you go to it and say, oh, I don't like it, I'll delete that bit or delete that bit. And that's why I also do it by hand as well. I write by hand, so I don't actually, I don't pressure myself by looking at a screen, by looking at what I've done, because with my handwriting, I can't really see what I've done, you know, to the same extent. Wow. So I'm less likely to criticise myself.
So you write the entire first draft by hand, and then do you continue the drafts after that by hand, or is it when do you decide you've got to get this on the computer?
Yeah, after the first draft, I'll probably keep doing it by hand a bit, and then I find when I'm typing it on the computer, a lot of the connections start to be made. It's that process of putting it onto the computer. I do that with my interviews as well sometimes, like planning them. But yeah, I think it's the process of putting it onto the computer. You're still kind of in that writing fiction kind of, you know, the creative mode. And then when you look back on it, maybe the next time, print it all out, then you start to look at structure and start, you know, editing. But I find often if you're writing by hand, it really changes the nature of what you write and how you write. And especially, you know, because Almost a Mirror is about memory, when you write by hand, I think you have access to memories that don't necessarily come up when you're on the computer. I don't know why. They have done studies into it, I think, but it's certainly the case for me.
Right. Do you think maybe that's because I wonder if that would still be the case for younger people who have. I
don't know. Yeah, I was just thinking that as I said it. Yeah. But certainly, you know, I'm holding a pen now.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah. So it's it must link back to journals or to what you know, someone my age was doing as a child, maybe. I don't know. That'd be a really interesting thing to look at.
And if we have time, I hope we can talk about how the structuring. We might not have time for this, but the way that you went about putting together Almost a Mirror is really interesting, but we'll see if we have time for that. So jumping back into your, you know, professional career, and this is relevant to how you and I first met. It was that in 2010 we hired you to edit our Newswrite magazine, and then we've spent the last, it's hard to believe, 10 years working together. You had your second child. My children grew up and finished high school in that time. And you, at that time, commissioned a lot of writers to write inspiring and informative articles for us for the magazine. And we're really great. I'm really pleased that you'll be continuing to commission those articles for our website. So we'll get to go back and see some of those articles republished and a whole new range of new work. So I'm pleased, firstly, that we'll get to keep working together and that we'll get to see those articles that you commissioned.
Yeah, so much great material there. You know, so many good articles, so many great writers.
Yeah, it's a really great collection of work. So while you were working with us, you did a master's and wrote your first novel, Just a Girl, which I have here and have read and loved. How did you find that experience?
Well, I hadn't written fiction, you know, since I was at high school, and it was just something that I found really difficult to do, you know. I mean, I think it's the hardest out of all the different writing I've done. I think fiction is the hardest. And so I decided to do a master's to see if I could do it, to see if I could write fiction. And I did a research master's so that I wanted to choose a supervisor, and that was Sue Wolfe. And it was fantastic because you have to submit work. You've got deadlines every month. You just have to do it. You know, there's no question. And yeah, I can just thoroughly recommend doing a master's. You know, out of the master's came that book, and it gave me the confidence just to keep writing and to kind of call myself a writer. I think it takes a long time to feel confident, you know, to do that. And it just showed me that writing fiction was what I wanted to do. You know, that's what I want to do with my life, really. I just want to keep doing it.
And you came out of it with the ultimate prize of having your first novel published.
Yes.
What was that experience of being a first-time published author?
Oh, it was just absolutely incredible. I mean, you're really uncertain, you know, at that point, and I didn't really have any expectation when I was writing it or submitting it. I mean, you hope, but I was lucky enough to go through to contact Terry Ann White at UWAP, and they published a lot of people who were working in you know, the academic world and who were writing fiction as part of masters and PhDs. And, you know, they were just really, really supportive. And also, you know, a publisher like that will let you, you know, experiment. And I'm very interested in, you know, experimentation and pushing boundaries with style and things like that. And yeah, so that was really wonderful to go through that process, the editing process with them.
And in terms of the publication, when we talked earlier, you said that what you found out about being published was that you didn't know anything about what it was to be published, and it was a very steep learning curve for you.
Yeah, well, you just don't. I mean, you don't realise, especially it's kind of like having a baby in the sense that you're just thinking about it coming out. You're just thinking about that moment. And you often don't think about what's going to happen immediately after that, you know? And so it's all the excitement of that. And you can't think about afterwards because you don't have any real concept of what that's going to be like. Mm. So yeah, I just learned a lot about marketing and how important, you know, the time frame, when your book comes out, the time frame is so important. Mm. You know, you basically don't, you know, you've got 6 weeks to 2 months to do a lot of self-promotion and to, you know, be, you know, on the run. And I didn't know any of that, you know. Mm. So you just learn later on. Like I think I was saying to you, you sort of have a bit of a sad moment where you go into a bookstore after 6 weeks or 2 months and it's not there, the book's not there anymore. And you just sort of think, oh, you know, they're just things that you don't realise. And so sometimes it can be quite challenging. But yeah, I mean, that's all something that you learn. And so the next, you know, if you get published again, the whole process is completely different.
Yeah. So I mean, I can see that the master's experience was such a positive experience for you that you then went on to do a PhD, which quite a thing to take on. Why did you decide to do that, and what did you get out of it?
Yeah, well, again, I was trying to work out how to. I mean, I moved to Castlemaine and I had, you know, 2 young children. And all I wanted to do was write fiction. So you're sort of working out how you can manage that juggle and how you can, you know, write a book. I mean, Just a Girl took 7 years. Almost a Mirror took 7 years. Oh, really? Wow. Like from public, you know, to get published. Yeah. And so I just thought, if I have, you know, in terms of, you know, self-discipline and getting help with it, I really like that process of working with a mentor. And I thought, if I get a scholarship for a PhD, you know, I've got 3 years where I can just dedicate time to doing something that's meaningful. Mm. And yeah, that's what happened. And yeah, it's a wonderful way to write a book. I mean, you've got someone there supporting you all the way through it, and it's extremely, you know, it's very challenging on an intellectual, you know, level. I mean, I was lucky because I did a PhD where it was 70% to 30% creative versus the critical component, which means that once I'd finished that, it was going to be publishable. Mm. Sometimes when you do PhDs, if it's 50-50, you don't come out with something that you can publish, which is really difficult. Mm. I'm not sure if people realise that, but it was just brilliant. And I did it remotely, University of Canberra.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was really was a mentor relationship.
And you were quite proactive in deciding or requesting who you wanted to have as your supervisor.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people don't realise that you can have a lot of say. You know, you don't have to be, what's the word? You know, it's about what you want to do at university. You know, if you're going to spend that much time working on something, you can research and you can ask the person. So I sort of went through and I looked at various writers who were in academia who I really loved. And I thought, oh, you know, who could I learn the most from? And I ended up with a fellow called Ross Gibson, who is, you know, just incredible. And he covered all the sort of different areas that I wanted to look at. So, you know, I wanted to look at the themes of photography and fiction, and he's a poet and he does digital media. So I was interested in someone who kind of had all different areas that he looked at. But he's also, you know, I knew that I wanted to be with someone who would be happy to experiment and you know, not just go down one path. And he was just all the way through just saying, go for it, you know. And it ended up being terrific, and just totally I just totally trusted him with everything, and I think vice versa. So yeah.
Well, and as you said, it meant that at the end of it, you came out with a manuscript in very good shape.
Yes.
And so at the end of 2018, you completed the PhD, and then in early 2019, you submitted it to the Penguin Literary Prize.
Yes, yes.
And do you want to tell us about how you found out that it did end up getting, well, tell us what happened.
Yeah, so I worked on it. I wanted it to be, you know, completely ready before I submitted it. So yeah, I worked, after it came out of the PhD, I just wanted it to be, you know, absolutely spot on before I sent it away. And so they had a date on their website when they were going to announce the shortlist. And so, you know, I was kind of pretending that I was really cool about it. And, you know, I didn't really think I had much of a chance, you know. But, you know, on the day, I was just like refreshing the screen all day. And it didn't get announced. And it was sort of the next day, didn't get announced. The next day, didn't get announced. So I think it was meant to be Monday or Tuesday. And by Thursday, it wasn't up there. And so I emailed the website, and I just said, oh, you said you were going to announce on Tuesday, you know, is there a new deadline or whatever? And I got an email from them saying, well, actually, we're waiting on you to get back to us. And I was like, what do you mean? And then it sort of dawned on me what that meant. And so I got out of the car, and I was in Bendigo. I was just doing like this happy dance down the street. So they said, yeah, we sent you an email ages ago saying that you've been shortlisted, and you never got back to us. So we were just waiting to see what happened. And they'd missed, like, I've got Kirsten S. Krauth on my Gmail, and they'd missed the middle letter. So I hadn't got an email. So I'm so glad I checked, because otherwise they might have thought, I was just not interested. But yeah, that was a kind of a very strange way to find something out that's so exciting.
Well, I'm so glad that it was good news. So you were shortlisted, and did that help you get a publisher for the book? And this was the manuscript Almost a Mirror. Obviously.
Yeah. I think it helped. I think my publisher had already contacted my agent to see the manuscript before the announcement. But it certainly meant, I mean, a shortlisting like that, I mean, it certainly means that that all the publishers wanted to read it, you know. So it was absolutely, you know, fantastic. And, you know, it means you've got something to put on the book, you know, on the back cover or whatever. And it just really, it really galvanized me to know this is, you know, that it was something that a lot of people enjoyed reading, and that it wasn't, you know, coming out of an academic context. It spoke to other people as well. That was really important to me, that people enjoyed it on an emotional level, you know. So I think it was obviously a bonus for Transit Lounge, you know, to know that, but they were already keen before that.
But there was a process of negotiation to go through, and you did have an agent helping you with that. Yeah. So my agent is Jo Butler, and she sent it to Transit Lounge first, but then, you know, she sent it all around. I can't say I think it's really important to have an agent, especially the second time around. I mean, I guess it depends on your personality. You know, if you enjoy that kind of argy-bargy dealing with, you know, different people at once, I just find that quite stressful. I don't think I know many people who would enjoy that, and I don't think I know many writers at all who would enjoy that experience.
No, exactly. So, and, you know, there's a lot of etiquette involved, you know, when you send it and when you get back. And I think it's much nicer, you know, it's much better. An agent just knows all that, you know, and they can do it, and then they can just kind of feed you the good bits. Yeah, thoroughly recommend it. Thoroughly recommend having an agent. And Transit Lounge always seemed like a good fit from the very beginning. And, you know, I love their books, and they really care about authors, and they care about writing, and they're very loyal as well, which is tricky these days, you know, but they're likely to have their stable of authors and keep you on, you know, for the next one and the next one. And you don't have that certainty these days. And it's nice to have, obviously, in this environment, it's nice to have some certainty.
Yeah. Yes, completely. So you're at the stage where you have the book, Almost a Mirror, and you even got to see it before Christmas 2019. So we're now at Christmas 2019. Not technically a long time ago, but feels a little bit like a lifetime ago. And as we all know, Christmas 2019, the bushfires hit. And you know, that was extremely difficult time for people. But you responded to it in a really positive and creative way. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was on the back of other people organising it. So Emily Gale and Nova Wheatman, two writers, they set up this this Twitter auction called Authors for Fireys. And the idea was that people would auction off things that they could offer, like books or services. People auctioned off, you know, editing a manuscript, etc. And it quickly sort of had this sort of very, you know, this snowball effect momentum. And I was trying to work out, you know, what I could offer. And I just thought, well, what I really have is contacts, you know, because of because of being a writer, a journalist at newspapers, you know, I know sort of people from the different worlds of writing. And so I contacted Clementine Ford and Christos Cholkas, people like him who aren't on social media, who aren't on Twitter, Clementine obviously is, to see what they could, you know, offer readers. And Clementine ended up doing, offering to cook a meal for someone, invite them over. And I did a big book pack of about 20 writers that I knew, and everyone was just so keen to get involved. And then, and Christos did one of his, he had like an annotated manuscript, and he donated all of his back catalogue. Absolutely. And it came in the post to me. And I was just, the hardest thing about the whole thing was handing this stuff on, as you'll see later. But yeah, it was just really, really wonderful. And so I just, you know, put those things up on Twitter, and then, you know, people started bidding for them. And obviously there was Nick Cave's suit. I don't know.
So this is this was obviously Kirsten's favourite item that was auctioned off, and we've got some photos. Lou, would you be able to put up the photos of the suit? So you can see here Kirsten looking absolutely fabulous and very rock and roll in the Nick Cave jacket. And then there's also a photo of Andy Griffiths wearing the jacket and his skeleton friend wearing the pants.
So yes, this might be quite a bit intriguing to people right now. But what happened was, so Nick Cave's a character in my book, Almost a Mirror. And I've been trying for about 7 years to get an interview with Nick Cave. So I've got to know all the people immediately around him very well. So I asked them if there was anything they could donate to the auction, and they said, "Oh, how about a suit?" And I was like, "Perfect." So I put it on Twitter, and it went crazy. and Andy Griffiths came through with the winning bid, which was $10,000. And I didn't know that he was such a huge Nick Cave fan. And so I offered to take, when the suit arrived, I thought, oh, I've got to wear it. So I had a photo taken in it. But then I offered to take the suit to Andy. So I dropped it off with him, and we had a wonderful day, because Andy actually, Almost a Mirror, my book, is set partly in the Crystal Ballroom with Nick Cave, and Andy was used to be in a punk band, and he performed in the Crystal Ballroom. So it was a really beautiful kind of, coming together of all different elements there.
It's fantastic. It was an extraordinary, really lightning fire process. So it sort of came up and did this amazing job, and you raised $500,000. Is that right?
$500,000.
That's
And the beauty of it was, though, I mean, those items that I just said were the bigger items, but it was mainly just, it was mainly people, $100 here, $100 there. We were saying the other day that it was like 2:00 in the morning, and everyone's just bidding crazily, and then the next day going,
or going to bed the night before. Heather Rose offered a tour. Heather Rose, who wrote The Museum of Modern Love and Bruni, two of my favourite books, and she's just, I think, an extraordinary author, and she put up that she would give a tour of Bruni Island, and I just thought, oh my goodness, and you've got to spend the day and have lunch with her. I couldn't think of anything better. And very late at night, bid an increasingly large amount of money, and then went to bed half just hoping that I would wake up in the morning and have this be the top bid, and then half of me hoping, oh my goodness, please someone bid higher than me. I don't know, fortunately or unfortunately, someone did bid higher than me, and it did go for an enormous amount of money.
Yeah, I had that moment with Cheryl Strayed, because Cheryl Strayed came on, and I just couldn't believe it. I'm chatting to Cheryl Strayed. But, I think I got wiped out like in about 10 minutes or something like that.
Well, it was extraordinary.
That's fine.
And $500,000, amazing.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing. Yeah.
So that was happening over Christmas 2019, 2020, and then coming into 2020, your book, Almost a Mirror, which is here, absolutely stunning cover. And your book, which, as you've mentioned, delves into the 80s post-punk music scene in Melbourne, and as an amazing weaving of music and memory and relationships and art, and it's really an extraordinary creation. So you have this amazing thing that you've created. It's due to be released on the 1st of April.
Should have known.
It was doomed from the beginning, but who would have expected that what would have doomed it was a pandemic?
Yes.
So how do you deal with releasing a book during a pandemic when everything is shut down?
Yeah, well, it's been quite a year.
Yeah.
So, pretty much in February, April was doing February, March was doing a lot of planning, for the book to come out, launches and festivals and things like that. And then about mid-March, all those emails kept coming through. I think I had a day of just everything being wiped out in one day. All your festivals have been cancelled. It's looking like your book's going to fall into the abyss. Pretty devastating after 7 years. And you just sort of thinking that your dreams are just going down the plug hole pretty much. Because a lot of it is dreaming, you're sort of hoping for things. So I remember just having a day where I just thought, I just don't know how to cope with this. And then I woke up the next day and I just thought, that's sort of my nature anyways, what can I do here, And I thought there were some other writers who I knew that had novels coming out, like Laura Jean McKay and Mirandy Rewo, and I just thought, why don't I'll just set up a little group, that we can just chat together on Facebook, because I just wanted some respite, because Facebook at that time was just, my whole news feed was about disasters, things happening, and I just thought, I want to have a little bit of a positive, let's celebrate our own books at least, And so I set up a group called Writers Go Forth, promote party, and I thought it would just have about 20 people. So I just invited some writers that I knew who'd like to celebrate with me. And by the end of the week, it had 1,000 people. It just sort of exploded, and I never expected it. And so I was kind of stunned, but everyone by that point was, lockdown was starting to happen, and people were realizing things weren't going to change for a bit. And so, I thought it would be nice to set up a sort of a group where people could celebrate the books that were coming out. And my idea at the time was just that, we could do, book launches, online launches in our bedrooms. That's what I was really thinking, which ended up happening for me. I didn't have any, I couldn't see, I was in lockdown. So my book launch was with my kids. We just got my kids to read bits out. And it's quite beautiful and weird to look at it. But I think we all needed it. I needed the process of it anyway, just to do it, just to say it's out there. Yeah. And everyone jumped on, and just there was this initial, it's changed a bit, things keep changing on social media very quickly now. But there was just this initial rush to support all of us. It was really amazing. Lots of readers as well, booksellers. Everyone just kind of rushed on and there was a lot of understanding about what was happening and how it was a disappointing thing, in the scheme of things, there's a lot more to worry about, but there was just a real understanding about that.
Yeah, it was a really a time of a great sense of loss, and that was a really positive place to be.
Yes, and it's going. Writers, of course, are now still, launching books, and a lot of Victorian writers are going through the same thing. So, and we had a pledge on there initially to buy each other's books, and it was a really great thing to feel like people were doing. So we were all and I'm still doing it. I know my mum's still doing it. And taking photos of the books as they arrived, and it really so on my feed I just have people posting photos of my book all the time that it had arrived. And because at that point you couldn't go into a bookstore, that was pretty exciting to have people, to see people holding it, that it was there.
And we'll post a link in the chat to Writers Go Forth, so that if anyone wants to join. Yeah,
especially for readers, because it's good to have discussion, and that's the thing, it hasn't changed, because people are now in lockdown again, it's still, writers still really need that support.
So what are the things that you have found have been effective in marketing and promoting the book?
Yeah, well, it had to be completely, the funny thing is, as I was just saying before, that I thought I knew what I was going to need to do this time around. So I set aside 6 weeks to 2 months, full time, go at it, and none of that could happen. So I'm homeschooling, no time whatsoever, and can't go to bookstores, can't do any of the things that I knew would work. So it's been a real learning curve, and and I think it's been a learning curve for everybody. But what's worked for me, because of the nature of where we're at, is booksellers have been incredible, absolutely incredible. People like making those personal connections with booksellers. They're hand delivering the book. They're talking over the phone and they're selling it. putting it on Instagram. Instagram for me has been the surprise. You know, I didn't know the extent to which Instagram helps you market a book. You know, you have one person kind of, you know, you have a blogger or someone reading it, and they post a photo, often a beautiful photo, like an artistic photo, you know, of the book in a setting, like on a beach, or I don't know, it's just been fascinating to me. Or, you know, with more likely with, you know, glass of bourbon next to it or something like that. And then you just got all these people who love that blogger who you don't know, and they'll go and seek it out as well. So yeah, I found Instagram to be really helpful this time around. And also, because my book's about music, it ended up having to morph into something else, you know, in a lot of ways. And also because my book's about live music and things that you can't do at the moment. It's sort of been a weird kind of time because people are able to read it, you know, but they can't experience it either. So it's been very strange. And also with, you see this poster behind me. So the Transit Lounge designed it with Josh Durham, who did the book cover. But when they were designing it, it was, you know, going to be, it was put up in all across Melbourne to look like it was an album cover, you know, which was fantastic. But the irony was, you know, for marketing, when it got put up, there were no gig posters. So this is the only poster that was up. But people noticed it, you know. But, you know, you never in your wildest dreams would have thought that it was everywhere because there weren't any gigs.
Yeah.
You know? So just lots of strange things like that.
Yeah. So we're travelling ahead with time, and we do have quite a lot of questions here. So I'm just going to go through. So one of the questions here is, how long does it take you to transfer a handwritten draft to screen? How many drafts did Kirsten do for this novel, including the handwritten draft? And that's a question from Dina Davis.
How long does it take to type in?
Yeah.
I tend to do it in bits and pieces. I'm not sure really. It depends on the process. In terms of number of drafts, I reckon it probably would have had at least 12.
Wow.
Yeah. But that's including, you know, some of the structuring stuff. But yeah, I mean, I guess going through a PhD, you're going over and over and over and over it. Yeah. And restructuring it. Just quickly, you know, I've said before, but, you know, when I structure things, I basically cut them all up into, you know, I physically cut up the manuscript and I put it on the floor, and I kind of do it because it's all fragmentary, you know, I do it by theme, and so yeah, that process, I'll do it and then I'll, you know, rearrange, and then I'll do it again. And yeah, I actually find that bit really fun.
Wow. So another question here from Helene Grover is, do you think it's important to have an academic background to produce a well-written novel?
No, definitely not. That's an easy.
You're right. From, and apologies if I pronounce his name incorrectly, Rochelle Rausch, what was your process of securing an agent?
Yes. Well, I had an agent. I've had two agents. For Just a Girl, my timing's always been a bit weird, because for Just a Girl, I got an agent just after I'd kind of got a contract. So it was a little bit late in the process. But that's the thing, you've got to prove yourself to an agent, and often, you know, having a contract will prove you to an agent. And then with Jo Butler, she was with Cameron Creswell, and she had actually read Just a Girl and really loved it, and had some great comments. And she came from an editing publishing background, and I find I always want an editor, as, you know, if an agent has been an editor, you know, you couldn't do better than that, really, you know, because they're going to give you so much help along the way in every sense. So she'd moved into more agenting rather than editing. I approached her on the basis of she knew my work already, and she loved the manuscripts, and yeah, she was happy to take it on. Yeah.
Fantastic. So there's a question here from Luke Kendall. Did you have much input for the back cover blurb or the cover, and then in brackets, or were you glad that was someone else's job?
No, I wasn't glad someone else's job. I want to decide on the cover. I'm a very visual person, and obviously the book is partly about photography. So, but the exciting thing about Almost Mirror Cover is that the designer Josh Durham was a friend anyway. I know him. He lives in Castlemaine, and so does the editor of the book. Little Castlemaine club here.
Wow.
Yeah, with this book. So it's got lovely connections. So Josh, he's one of the best book designers in Australia, and he read the book. He knew the Crystal Ballroom scene, and he came up with, I think there were 5 different versions, and to me, yeah, there was just no question. You know, it was obvious at the beginning. I think I asked for it to be slightly softened, so it had a, it was only one, because it's got it's subtle, but it's sort of got soft wallpaper behind it. So so I just wanted it to be slightly softened. Back cover blurb, yes, I did that with the publisher. Yeah, I prefer not to do blurbs. I find them the hardest thing to do out of everything. Yeah, synopsis, blurbs, really, really difficult. So often it is better to ask someone else to do that, but to get the essence, get the essence of it. Yeah, but you also know it's so important. So it's really, that's a tricky thing.
Yeah.
You need someone to have a job who, you need to be able to approach someone who will do that for you, I think. Yeah.
So one final thing, what are you working on next?
Not much at the moment. I'm finding it. Oh, you mean in terms of fiction? Or
I mean in terms of the podcast.
Oh, yes. So it's morphed into... So because the book is set up as a mixtape of 80s music, it's got 44 songs that were from the early 80s, and every chapter is a song. And so I got some funding from the university. I got a Donald Horn Fellowship.
Congratulations. And
a Creative Fellowship to do further research, which has ended up being for a podcast about 80s music. And it's focusing on the 12 Australian songs that are in the book that you heard, and you heard Barbados at the beginning. So I've been collaborating with musicians around the country, and they're doing new versions of these songs. And I'm reading from the book the chapters that go with those songs. And we're doing so the podcast will also be about the history of that particular song. So, for example, there will be a 30-minute podcast on Barbados, and I'll be talking to, people who contributed to the song being made, band members, if they're around, like the Models, fans of the song. So again, it'll be about memory and music and how they connect, and how sort of that song is situated in, 80s Australia, what that means now, Yeah.
Fantastic. I am very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, well, it's tricky at the moment because I've got all the podcast gear, but my plan was I'd lined up all these interviews in Sydney, and my plan was to interview people in person, because I think that's needed if you're talking about memory. Again, like if I do an interview, like an arts journal interview, I like doing it in person if I can. So all of those are just, have been postponed again. So maybe next year it'll happen. Maybe, we'll see.
Well, I think that leads very well into the the piece that we're going to see next. So we're about to play an excerpt from Tracy Spicer's Wednesday Night Book Club, which is on Facebook, and an episode was done on Kirsten's book, Almost a Mirror, included in Conversation with Ginger Gorman. And then before, or I can't remember the exact order, but you know, in the night, there were live performances with a band, with Kirsten reading excerpts of her book, Almost a Mirror, and we're going to get to hear one of those excerpts. And it's about 10 minutes long, and we will come back very briefly at the end to say goodbye. But before we go into it, Kirsten, could you introduce the musicians that are playing with you?
Yes.
And perhaps even introduce the song that we're going to hear too.
Yeah, so this song is Zoo Music Girl, and it was originally performed by The Birthday Party, and it was Nick Cave who did this song. It's quite a wild song, as all his music was then. And this band that we put together is Michelangelo, Michael Simic, Michaela Davies, and she's on the bass, and Richard Andrew, he's singing and on guitar, but he's the one who's producing this podcast. He's got a little studio in Kyneton, and so it's been beautiful because I can actually physically get to him, and we've been recording together. So yeah, it's quite something. It's quite something. This performance. Yeah.
Wonderful. We'll go over to the. Thanks, Kirsten.
In the beginning, there is darkness. The camera is shaking in his hands until he puts it on the tripod. It is much heavier than he remembered. The most important thing is to keep it all steady. Benny dangles on a platform just meters from the roof. He likes looking down at the ballroom as if he's swinging on the chandelier. People forget he's up here. The birthday parties start off aimless. They're wasted men. Nick wanders about on stage like a deranged kid at a debutante ball. Tracy drifts. Tracy's hat shelters his face, leather pants reflecting the lights as he sweats. But as Nick starts, he likes looking down at the ballroom as if he's swinging on the chandelier. People forget he's up here. The birthday parties start off aimless. They're wasted men. Nick wanders about on stage like a deranged kid at a debutante ball. Tracy drifts. Tracy's hat shelters his face, leather pants reflecting the lights as he sweats. But as Nick starts to bump into him, Tracy wields his bass like a machine gun starting to fire. The repetitive bass line drowns the band, ritualistic. The one chord that builds a mood of menace, working as a mantra for the crowd, exercising something from their souls. It's Roland who appears to do the work, all interior, wearing horizontal stripes, cigarette dangling at the corner of his mouth. The way he plays is frantic. Benny finds the intensity frightening. But as Roland leans inwards, his guitar takes on the jarring whine of feedback, a broken bottle to the ears. Benny gets caught up in Roland's loop of sound and wants to know how he does it. The guitar at a certain angle as he sculpts noise, a violation that enters the body that's not meant to happen. Channeling an animal that comes in and out of his control. Nick stumbles around with his large, lolling head. The mic is jammed up to his mouth. A toddler clutching a bottle of milk in its fists, fearful of another kid grabbing it.
Spit out the shells, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Rattle those sticks. The sound is beautiful, it's perfect. The sound of her young legs in her stockings, the rhythm of her walk, it's beautiful. Let it twist, let it break, let it buckle, let it bend. Oh, I want to hear the noise of my zoo music girl, zoo music girl, zoo music girl, zoo music girl.
Nick pulses the beat with one clenched hand. Benny can see Guy to the side of stage playing roadie, waiting for the fall. Nick disappears for a while. He comes back with a canvas, carrying it like a warrior shield. He tries to scale the PA stack but keeps falling down. He stutters, on his knees. Benny watches him, trying to anticipate his movements and keep him in frame. Nick moves so quickly, but Benny's watched him enough. It's Jenny's, an original oil painting neat across the canvas. Nick plays it like a wobble board before flinging it into the audience. And as it sails through the air, Benny captures its arc before it lands and is belted about by the crowd. The girls at the front watch the band like they're in line for a beheading, waiting for Nick to be monstrous, to hurt them. The lights roam their faces, macabre in the twilight. Roll up for the freak show. The girls stand together in the centre, hoping to be chosen, glittering in the mirrors where Nick can see them reflected along with his own face. Nick pretends not to see them. He's locked in battle with his songs, the band, and the audience too. Only occasionally does he surrender and let his body give in.
My body is a monster driven insane. My heart is a fish toasted by flames. I kiss the hem of her skirt. I murder her dress till it hurts. There's one thing and I love in this world, and that's to make love with my zoo music girl, zoo music girl, zoo music girl, zoo music. Ow!
Nick flings his hands out behind him and chops off Roland's cigarette, knocking it from his mouth. The ember burns into Nick's hand and he keeps going before he screams. Nick and Roland look like colour has never entered their world, flickering through black and white film. Benny's eyes move from one to the other, trying to decide who he'd rather be. The audience doesn't sing, but they know every pulse of it. They feel its physical effect, the landscape it travels through. But what they are really waiting for is to see Nick go manic. Benny waits for it too. That transition into some unknown space where things move from edgy to dangerous. Through it all, Mick Harvey plays in the shadows. Nick leans out into the audience with his long arms and grabs the graceful, pale hand of a girl. He pulls her up on stage. She's in a short velvet dress and is not sure what to do now she's up there. She starts to sway, turn to Nick, eyes only for Nick. He drapes himself around her, a praying mantis about to devour its prey, an ugly insect. Nick grabs the lead and swings the mic like a lasso over Tracy's head. It clunks to the ground, sending a shock through the amps, and Guy runs to get it, bent like a servant. Guy puts it back up on the mic stand. Nick grabs it and teases, drops it again. A thump. Guy just leaves it. Tracy's drunk and is starting to sway. Guy props him up with one hand, waiting for him to go face down. The girl puts her arms around Nick and dances in front of him, whipping his body with her dark hair as he winds the lead around her neck. She dances near him, sullen, as he takes her by the arm and tries to drag her back into the audience. But she doesn't want to go back. Nick turns away from her, no longer interested. A discarded toy dropped from his tarantula hands. Nick lies on the front of the stage, face level with the crowd. He plays to the people, the waves of his lyrics rolling out. His body shakes like he's having electric shock therapy.
Sound is beautiful, it's perfect. I call out her name in the night. Zoom music girl, zoom music girl. I call her by her family name. Zoom music girl, zoom music girl. Oh God, let me die beneath her fists. Zoom music girl, 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 zoom music girl.
He dangles the mic and rolls off stage, falling into the dark river of hands, disappearing below the crowd. He surfaces and tries to swim from the stage. As he strokes, the girl on stage starts to move away too. The mic lead a lazy loop. Benny waves from the platform, trying to get Guy's attention. As Nick is surfed by the crowd, the lead gets tighter. Benny makes a cutting gesture to Mick Harvey to stop the show, but he doesn't look up. The girl's body starts to float away. Mick Harvey and Roland on either side of the stage stand there looking at each other, while Phil staccato drums continue the attack. And as the girl goes under, the crowd can now see. They rise up and start pushing Nick back to shore as he finishes the song, the girl floating with him. As she reaches the stage, Guy runs on and tries to loosen the lifeline, pulling the lead. An angry groove cuts into her neck. Nick bends to pick her up and lifts the noose above the girl's head. He turns to the audience, palms outstretched. He holds the girl out to them, dangling in his arms. A lifeless girl, pale skin, long dark hair, a sacred offering.
Fantastic, honestly. That and is one of the best writing events that I've seen, whether online or face to face, it really is just something else, and I think defies categorization. So well done. And if anybody wants to see that recording again, or the other performances that were on the night, you just need to go to the Wednesday Night Book Club on Facebook, and you can see the whole event. I was
going to say, it's not all punk. There's gentle pop as well.
That's right. Yeah, so you get to have a mixture of it. So look, and that's almost a mirror, Kirsten's book that has all come out of. It is a beautiful, brilliant work, and I highly recommend that you get a copy of it so you can read it. Well done, Kirsten.
Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah, really. So thank you, Kirsten, for doing this with us this afternoon. Thank you to our membership officer, Lou Garcia-Dolnick, for making sure that everything ran. I know that we, had a hit with the video, but gosh, the fact that we even got to pay is nothing short of a miracle. And you can go back and see more of it.
It was very punk. I was very happy with that. I was very happy.
We planned it. Planned it. We'll be sending out an email with a brief survey, which we'd love you to fill out and to get your feedback. And we hope to see you at our next First Friday Club in September. And thank you, Kirsten, and I hope that we get to see you in person soon. Look after yourself.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me here.
Absolute pleasure.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.